Steph, I'll hand on over to you.
Thank you, Brendan. Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie Rizar-Rodriguez. I am Boston-based. I work for the Clubhouse Network. My job description, my job title is knowledge manager. A lot of what I do involves, taking what it is that we do with the Clubhouse and spreading it with people all over the world. I also work directly with coordinators based in the Midwest of the United States, Europe, and the Middle East. So if you're from any of those, I'd love to hear from you. I'm so excited to be here to talk about probably one of my favorite things is podcasting. I'm going to do a little bit of a screen share, but not for too long. So during this session, we're really going to kind of get to know like what is a podcast, how do you take an idea and kind of run with it, and then what do you do from there. So I'm going to share my screen really quickly. That's me, Stephanie Rizar-Rodriguez. Pleasure to meet all of you. So what is a podcast? A podcast in its simplest terms is just a way to deliver audio to people. Sometimes I call it like on-demand radio. It's similar to what Netflix is for TV, right? It's a way to stream audio. And I'd like to think that you can make a podcast in about 6 easy steps, right? And those steps are coming up with an idea, taking that idea, recording it, and then uploading it onto your computer, editing that idea into something that's clean and linear and kind of makes sense, right? And then sharing it online with there are different host providers called RSS feeds that we'll get into later. And then from there, it's just finding an audience of people that want to listen to it, right? A lot of the work of a podcast is done up front, right before you share it with the public. One of the biggest questions is what do you need? How do you get started? Audio equipment sounds super expensive and like a really big investment. And, I always tell people that the best microphone is the one you have. It's the one that's on your computer, or on your phone. So if you have a smartphone, you likely already have a recorder app already installed. If in the iPhones, it's in the utilities folder. I think in Android it's called voice memos. So that's all you need to record. Editing software, there are plenty of high-end softwares. There are plenty that are open source and free. One of my favorites is the Anchor app. It's a mobile-based app, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. And you can basically do it from start to finish. You can record directly onto the app, and then from there you can add music, add art. It uploads directly onto Spotify, Apple Music, or Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts and all those other big providers. So it is pretty cool being able to see your finished work on one of the major platforms. So and then headphones, ideally you want something that's like connected, like a wired headphone, anything that will allow you to listen clearly to what it is that you're recording. Because you might think you're getting a great recording, but in reality it might need to be adjusted in some way. So the also great thing about podcasting is, other than these kind of 3 things, you don't need much else to really get it going. You're able to put it online either for free or for very low cost. It's kind of one of the biggest differences with radio. With radio, you kind of have to be approved for them to play you on the radio stations. Here, podcasting, you kind of can put out your own show and it's yours to share and you completely own it. So, when people are interested in attending a workshop around podcasting, a lot of times it's because you might have an idea of your own. So I'd be interested, if you have an idea of your own, I'd love you to kind of build on that during this session. If you don't have an idea of your own, this is how we're going to talk about how we're going to get there. first and foremost, what is something that you're excited about? What is something that, once you get talking about, you can't stop, that is a great place to start on, building an idea for a podcast. I also always recommend listening to a lot of different types of podcasts, and saying like, what do you like about them? What don't you like about them? What is, something that's boring to you, or what do you want to hear more of, that is a great way for you to start seeing like, what is this idea and how can I share it in an interesting way and kind of build an audience around that. We're going to go into, mainly the first 3 types of podcast formats that I have listed here. A format is just a way to organize the show's content, so all podcasts are edited, if they don't sound like they're edited, that means they're edited really well, because you want it to sound like a kind of a continuous and flowing conversation. But there's a lot of things that are natural conversations that, just don't translate well to audio, long spaces, repeating of words, there'll be some cleaning up that you have to do in order to make sure that your story and what it is that you're trying to share is actually, a story that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So there's a bunch of different types. I won't go over all of these. Like I said, I'm going to go over the first 3, which is interview, solo or monologue, and a conversational. And I might even cover a panel. Those are the most popular types. And then you can get into other things like storytelling. That is, those are kind of like made up stories, not necessarily an audio book, but it is sort of like a fictional story, or sometimes, a true story. Repurposed, that's usually, you're taking maybe a live performance and you're editing it into a podcast format. So you might add some commentary, or you might take some stand-up comedy and kind of break it up and make that a show in of itself. And a hybrid is just any combination of 2 or more of these, so the beautiful thing about podcasts is that these are skeletons, but by no means do you need to follow, what this is saying and how to do it. So it's completely open, it's completely flexible, and I think that's not some of the best parts about podcasting. So I am gonna stop sharing really quickly, and I am interested to hear, does anyone here either already have an existing podcast, or are you looking to kind of start one? So like, where are we in the process? Feel free to drop that in the chat. I also want to hear, what are some of your favorite podcasts? Like what's some things that you're listening to right now, and think about why, why are they, why does it keep coming keep bringing you back week after week? So all of that will really help you kind of identify what it is that you want to do, and how you can get to that point. So what we're going to do is, before I kind of jump into I'll just share the podcast format right now. So I'm going to share my screen one more time, and then you all will that way, because we're going to work on some like a focus statement for our individual shows that we're all going to kind of come up with and leave here with. And from those shows, I want you to think about what type of format is going to make sense for you, because these are all things that will be helpful to kind of think through before you even kind of make that commitment to go in. So this is where I was. This is where I am. An interview, that's 1 or 2 people, or 1 or more hosts talking to someone, and that there's a new person each episode usually. It's not uncommon to repeat people, but most of the time it's you're mixing it up every episode. This could be interviewing a friend, someone that's has an interesting story to tell, an athlete, an artist. It can really be anyone, and it's usually about their experiences. So if there's something interesting that a story that this person has to tell, this is a great way to kind of do that. A monologue, it's, you need just yourself. It is a little harder to do because it's only one person talking the entire time. So it needs a lot of, research and a lot of kind of preparation, just because it's difficult. It's harder to continue a conversation with just yourself than it is continuing a conversation with, another person or maybe 2 or 3 people. But once you start bringing in 2 or 3 people, that's what goes into what we call a conversational or a co-host chatcast type thing. There's a bunch of different names for it. It's usually 2 people having a conversation. Sometimes they have guests, sometimes they don't. But it's mostly 2 people going back and forth. And these tend to be kind of the most popular formats. I'm sure that if you're listening to enough podcasts, you'll find that they tend to follow some of these formats. And in the examples, I listed a few different ones that are some of the more popular ones on like the Google Play Music or the Google Podcast and Apple's podcast format. So, when planning a podcast and when looking for what to do, you're going to want to consider a few different things. You don't really need to know everything, but you got to do your research, right? If you want to interview a local artist, find out what it is that, what does their work come from? What is it based in? Where are they from? How is that representative of, what's important to them? Try to do your research. You don't need to know everything about the person, but enough to get you started on a conversation. So, another thing is, why is this story important to you? A lot of times when people are coming into making their own podcasts, they have a story that they want to tell. So why are you the one to tell it? What about that story connects to you in some way? So you're gonna have to kind of think about those things quite a bit. And looking at what's out there already. There last, I checked, there was 500,000 podcasts available on the major providers. That's Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. 500,000 podcasts. So there's a lot of people out there. So there's a big chance that someone is doing something very similar to what you want to do. And that's not a reason to not do it. But listen to what they're doing and how are they doing it in a way that's interesting to you, or what are some things that you would like to do differently, like to change, kind of remix the idea. And then right here, I kind of end it with develop a focus statement. And I'm going to give us, maybe like 4 minutes to kind of do that together. And I'd love to hear back from some of you all as well. And the focus statement is, it's broken down into these 3, let's say, parts of sentences. It's kind of like a Mad Lib if you've ever seen those. My show is about blank, and on it you will hear blank, and you should listen if you are blank. So an example by Lavia Yagi from, she has her own podcast. She's from the Google Creative Program. Her example for this was, this show is about all things pop culture, and on it you will hear my most pressing rants, raves, and faves in this topsy-turvy world, and you will listen if you're somebody who wants to be their best self and loves real talk. So in that, I've made in bold, what is the show about? It's all things pop culture. On it, you're going to hear her rants, her raves, and her faves. And then you should listen if you want to be your best self and you love real talk. So I'm going to put that, I'm going to stop screen sharing real quick. And I'm going to put those questions in the chat, because I would love for everyone just to take, let's say about 3 minutes, and you're welcome to, have your camera on, have your camera off. And I'd love to hear back from a few of you of what that is for you. So I will stop for a few minutes. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. And yeah, answer that question in the chat. And computer right here. And we just got a great question, so I'll just answer it out loud, Lily, because I'm sure others have the same. So I would love for you guys to fill in these lines right here. My show is about blank. On it, you will hear blank, and you should listen if you are blank. You can use that as a starting point. You definitely don't have to, if you want to take it a different way, feel free to do that as well. But what is your show about? Who's going to be on it, and what type of people are going to be interested in what you're doing? I'm going to give it about 1 more minute. And when thinking about these, try to be really specific. Someone gave a great example about a show around sports. But sports is a big topic. So what specifically is that going to be about? What's going to be covered? Yeah, get really specific, guys. All right, y'all. I'm going to stop sharing audio. I would love to hear back from some of you. Feel free to unmute and just call out anything. There are some great ones coming in. Jasmine says, listening to an astrology podcast, which I think is super cool. I would love to hear more about that. Hannah's show, Hannah's show on a similar note is about tarot cards. And on it, you'll hear tarot readings and the card meanings. You should listen if you're interested in predicting the future. Very cool. Another one coming in, my show is around action movies. In it, you will hear comments about different movies of the moment and you should listen if you're interested in researching different movies. Very cool. My show is about anime, and on it you will hear about which anime we recommend, what we think we should watch, and the hottest anime characters. You should tune in if you're a weeb like myself and enjoy watching anime as well. Very cool. Thank you. Thank you. And up here there was one. My show is about sports. On it you'll hear things about sports, and you should listen if you're a sports fan. When I asked, it'll be about the NBA specifically. So these are a great start. When you're developing your idea, it's going to grow a lot. It's going to take you in a lot of different ways. So it's good to always think like, who am I making this show for? What about this is going to be impactful to people all over. You're going to get listeners from all over the world. So how can you make that like a kind of universal experience? So I'm going to hear, if there's anyone else, I'd love to hear from some of you. So feel free to unmute and share your idea or share, what brought you here. This should also be a great place to get some feedback on a podcast idea if you want to share what it is that you're working on. So I'm going to open the floor up. If you have any questions, or if you want to share, what it is that the podcast you're working on, now's the time. Ryan just put in, my show is about soccer. On it, you'll hear a debate about who's the best player, and you should listen if you think Ronaldo is better than Messi, so I can change your mind. I like that. Very good. My show is about video games. On it, you'll hear about video game trends, release, and opinions of other players. On it, you should listen if you are a fan of video games or if you want to impress your friends with your comments. Very cool. There seems to be some controversy over this Messi versus Ronaldo situation, which is good because you want your podcast to spark conversation. You want people to have a lively discussion and debate ideas. Absolutely. And those of you that have commented in the chat, what type of format do you think this works? Is it an interview? Is it just you talking? What does it look like to you? Just me talking or maybe some interviews. Yep. And it's not uncommon for places to kind of mix it up, usually they for some continuity they tend to the same format, but it's not unusual to bring in like guest hosts or other people that are going to kind of pop in and out. And that's the beauty of this, is like it's completely in your control. You can structure it however you want to. So another good thing is, or another thing that I want to discuss is around audio. I'm going to share a resource page that I developed with you. I'm going to put the link in the chat. And on it, there's a bunch of different, questions to get you started, but also, recording and interviewing is just the first part. There's the part of editing audio. There's the part of, getting a good recording. In the podcast that you've done, most of it is just you talking. Yep. So it's probably more of a monologue style than others. Yeah. And it's kind of thinking of like, that's just the first part, right? Then there's the sharing, there's the putting together, and you can always improve your podcast. There are podcasts that I've listened to that have over 1,200 episodes, you know, and the first episode is very different from the 500th, from the 1,000th, you know, so definitely consider looking at how an idea can grow. I listed a few different ways to kind of get your ideas going and get started. It's definitely much easier to start and get your ideas organized. But I'd be interested to hear, you know, what is some things that you have questions on specifically? You know, is it how to do interviews? Is it audio? Is it like microphones? I'd love to hear what you guys think. You know, and I mentioned that a cell phone is a really good place to start. It's, you know, it's going to be a great quality. You're going to want to make sure that, you know, when you're recording, you're also getting a good recording from the beginning. It'll save you a lot of time having to redo it later. One way that, you know, that we ensure that is making sure you get really close to that person, or, you know, if you're going to be interviewing someone virtually, you can definitely have them record themselves and then just kind of piece those pieces of audio together. There's a lot of different ways that people have been doing that, whether it's recording Zoom calls or maybe it's recording each on their phone, and then, like I said, stitching it together. So there's a few different ways to do that. There's this great video that's in the Notion that I just sent, that link I just sent. That's a guide to sound. I always say that sound is a lot more unforgiving than audio is. You know, you can get away with like a shaky camera for a video or something minor like that, but audio is a little bit harder to kind of come back from. So there are some good ways that you can do that. You know, a lot of times if I'm just recording by myself, I might I might record in a closet or somewhere small, put some pillows and blankets around. That way it kind of picks up less sound than, you know, if I was just, you know, in a big room with a lot of echo and things like that. So, you know, there's some small little ways that you can make your recording sound even better, even if it's just on even if it's just on your phone. So in an interview, how would you ask questions without upsetting, offending, or making them mad? Granted, everyone will have their own opinion. Yes, there's definitely a way to ask questions, you know. There are a few things I do. You know, one, don't start with the hardest questions. I think that puts people on the defense a little bit. So you might have a lot of you might have conversations around a lot of other, you know, maybe less upsetting topics. And you know, usually I try to have like a pre-interview with someone. I don't record them, but like I get to talk to them about, you know, what it is that we're going to talk about and maybe some different topics. I usually ask them if there's any topics they want me to stay away from, because you also don't want to pressure someone to respond. But yes, like, you know, I tend to build on questions, you know, so continuously asking why and allowing people the space, right, to answer that question. So it'll feel kind of uncomfortable at first, just waiting and holding for like 30 seconds. But yeah. And, you know, I think if you are coming into the question in a way that's not meant to be harmful, you know, I think someone can see your intentions. You know, it really depends how that question is put together. I feel like from podcast mine, it was like a therapy session because I need to go deeper for it and everything for the zodiac sign, placement, compatibility. Yeah, so there's a lot here. I love that you say it could be like a therapy session. I agree. I think that that's the beauty of so many different podcasts. You can always go deeper, and there are some that are, you know, a story over 5 episodes, so you can do that, and keep going deeper. How do you get audio better? Because sometimes it's not as good. So a good way to improve audio is I always do a test, make sure that that microphone is consistently in the same place. I always say like about a pinky's distance, it feels really close, but if you can keep it at that, you're going to get the most clear and consistent audio. Be somewhere that's like a more of a small space, like a gym is terrible for recording. A bathroom is better, a closet is even better than that. So it also depends what you have available to you. Smartphones are going to be better recording devices than a phone that isn't a smartphone, and if that's still not working for you, there's plenty of inexpensive microphones, and I recommend a field recorder if you don't have anything else. Like if you have a phone and that's not going, I'll show you what a field recorder is. There's one that I've used a lot, and I find it to be really easy. And you can find something similar to it, but those tend to be like, a few $100s. But I also tell people you don't need to invest in a lot of expensive equipment at first. Sometimes it's better if you don't, that way you can get a sense of, do I like doing this? Is this something that I want to keep doing? And like I said, there's a bunch of free editing softwares, or your Clubhouses, your teen tech centers, they might have them. They have them as well. So that could be a good place to edit audio. But what is it about, when you say the audio doesn't come out good, is it that it comes out staticky, or is it, I'd love to hear more about what isn't good about it. Are there any other questions? Does anyone have a podcast that they're actively like working on and either producing or sharing? That's fair. I mean, it is kind of a big undertaking, but it's definitely a lot of fun. And the good thing is you can put it out as frequently or as little as possible. I know some podcasts that are every day. That's a big commitment. Those usually have a full team. But I know others that go on like once a month. So you're fully in control of that. And so definitely check out the link that I sent there. But if you're looking for a good and kind of easy way to get started on podcasting, I would recommend that you check out this this app called Anchor. I just put the link in the chat. There are a lot of great podcasts that are there. The only issue I have with it is that you can't like cut audio in the middle. So it's difficult to edit. So you kind of have to play it all the way through. But it's also, a free service, and it does all the hosting and all of that for you. So it's a really good way to get started and kind of get your idea out there in the meantime. And you'll be able to see it on Spotify, on Google Play Music, and all the other big providers. So, all right, y'all. Well, that is, that's the bulk of what I have. I want to make sure that if there are any other questions that you have, that I have the opportunity to answer those for you, or anything else that might be helpful. All right, well, I hope that all of you are able to share, with the greater network what it is that you're doing. And if you do put out a podcast, we'd love to hear it. So please, share that with us. And it was really wonderful getting to know you. Oh, look, someone's working on a podcast about the Panama Canal and their stories. I think that's great. looking into your own community and the people around you is a great place to start interviewing and meeting people and even honing those skills, right? It's less intimidating, I think, to interview someone you know than it is to kind of work with someone you don't know or someone you're meeting for the first time, during the interview. So, are there any other questions, comments, concerns? You feel free to put them in the chat. Feel free to unmute. All right. Well, thank you all. It was a pleasure, getting to know you and hearing your ideas. And I hope you enjoy the remainder of the summit. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all.